talk about the Open Insulin project. So it will not be really a scientific talk. There will not be a lot of hard data on it. It will be more about the diabetes issue crisis and the landscape of what happened in the US, mostly. So for starting, just a brief history of insulin. It's discovered by Frederick Banting that he discovered that the insulin can be used as a treatment for people with diabetes. And this first extract the insulin from animals. So they got pancreas, they mash everything, extract the insulin, and they start using that as a treatment. And I think it's pretty interesting that he refused to put his name on the patent because of ethical issue. And then with the co-discoverer James Collip and Charles Best, they sold the patent to the Toronto University for $1 symbolic. And then the university licensed the right to produce insulin to a lot of different companies. And the goal was the more company producing insulin, the better. And then Genentech developed the first synthetic insulin. So they modify E. coli and they start producing the two different parts of insulin, mashing them together. And then it become, they patent a lot of it, and then it become this really big pharma company. So if we fast forward what's happening now with the insulin crisis, we have 422 million adults living with diabetes. It's expected, I think, in 250 to be 500 million and something. And yeah, they're estimating their story is around 10 to 20 million people per year because of lack of access. And the price of insulin, when you look from the 1970 to 2017, then it really followed an exponential curve.
And that's because the protein changed so much, right?
Yes, a lot of technology.
That's in the US?
That's in the US, yes. So here it's really US, the price range.
How is it in Europe, do you know?
Yes.
10 times less.
Yeah, and basically in US it would be $300 and 10 times less in Europe. So it would be between $30 and $40. And then you have 70%, which is refunded, the social security.
Is that for one dose or for
It's for $1.
What's the amount? Yeah.
Yeah, so I think in one vial you have something like 3 milligram.
Wow. Okay.
So it's 3 milligram at $300.
How much do you need if you have type 1 diabetes, for example?
I think you need, so I'm not the best to talk about that because I'm
diabetic. And this amount in a vial, it's up to 3 weeks more or less that you can. Depends on
it varies a lot.
the person.
So you multiply this by what, 70, and you get what it costs in a year.
I really don't know, but 700 maybe something euros. Or more. I don't know.
And then because of people rationing in the US, then because we always focus a lot on this, but there's also a lot of medical complications that people lost their lamp, they have heart disease, a lot of medical issue which add up because you try to make the best of what you have left in your fridge, and at one point you will have complication. So the question is why? I think everybody knows, my opinion on it, but I will kind of still detail some of the practical things why it's so expensive in the US. So one of these is price regulation. In Europe in general, the way you have regulatory body and the way it works is they look at the maximum and the minimum of price range that is sold in Europe and then they negotiate in between. So then you have some kind of harmonization and you have negotiation power from the state basically. In the US, it doesn't really exist except for Medicare and Medicaid, which are kind of social security, but for really specific. Yeah, it's complicated. Good. So I think Medicaid is for if you really have. I'm not even sure actually about the difference between.
So one is for older people and the other one is for very poor people.
Yeah, Medicaid is for the really poor people, right? Yeah.
I think it's the other way around, but yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, I think, I don't know.
And then the federal system and the state have, by law, can't negotiate the price. So they have interdiction to actively try to regulate the price.
And I think also, just to add a little bit, people in Medicare and Medicaid often like jump from companies to Medicare and Medicaid, so
Yeah,
the negotiation also is sometimes a little lacking.
yeah,
But what I always fail to understand in this framework is if a company just decides to sell it 100.
Yeah.
Right? They will still make a heap of money.
Yeah.
And will overtake the market. How come no one does this?
yeah, but this cannot be the follow-up of Yeah, but it's a good question, it's why it doesn't work.
This is your new business.
Yeah. The second issue is you can't import drug if you're in the US because of the FDA want to be sure that what you take is perfectly safe. So you had a lot of story during the last election of people going to Canada to try to buy insulin and then come back, and it became campaign argument from Bernie Sanders, who went to the bus and take picture and say, well, look what we have to do to get affordable insulin. So for Americans, it's similar to Europe. Yeah, so it would be $30, $40, maybe a bit more for this. But it's illegal, so you kind of you're doing illegal activity by doing that. So yeah, if you're in the US and you're not close to the border, then you're a bit trapped in a system where you can't really have other provider than the pharma industry. So then we go into your question about what happened, why we don't have competition. And one of the main issues is you have 3 major companies which have the global share, and all the price raised at the same time for those 3 companies. So they follow the same exponential curve. So of course people start wondering, maybe they have some kind of agreement. So they are talking about, allegedly, I don't want to be sued, but there is a lawsuit right now about price fixing. And they are trying to prove that there's collision between the big pharma and that which is complicated to prove because it could be one raise the price and the other see that and it would just raise the price and it would be incremental that way. For the competition, actually there is now one company, Biocon, who are in the American market, but one of the issues is the FDA system where they went to the market. But they had to have an American company tied to them. And to me, the way I see it is they organize that way that they will be sure that they will not disrupt too much the price. So instead of 300, I think singly is 200 something. So it's still cheaper, but it's not the huge difference you can expect.
Has there been any sort of antitrust work around this? I mean, beyond collusion, I mean, I don't know, there's always this kind of like, you haul Facebook in front of Congress or something, and like, is there any discussion at all about it? I mean, it's a pretty convincing graph, right?
No, because trust, the way trust is defined is really specific. Okay. And as long as you have multiple multiple companies who have shares in them, then it's, I mean, there's big companies which are in position of trust. They know how to play to have enough, competition that it would not be. So there is a need for reform of the antitrust.
The main, there are 2 crazy things here. One is that it's the same company that sells the same product for 10-fold different
exactly.
in different markets, right? And the second is that if you make the numbers, I'm sure that if you take it 50% down, the price, right, you overtake the market from 20% to 90%, and you gain more. Yeah,
but this is why you have This is complicated because also of the FDA structure and the way the entry price to go into the market is really, really high. And the big pharma are really good at doing 2-side lobby, where they lobby to reduce the cost of interest of new product, new antibiotics, but they lobby to make the entry price way higher. So they have way to be sure that to reduce competition.
Do you know, and I don't want to, you can move on if you don't have time, but do you know why Genentech doesn't make insulin anymore? I mean, they got bought by, I'm forgetting who, but it's not one of those big companies. So, why did they leave the market is maybe an interesting question.
I don't know, it's a good question. Maybe they say, oh, there is no future. So, yeah. Yeah, and also to respond to the question, I was looking at price yesterday, and I saw a paper when they talk about the Chinese market, where they negotiate to buy in bulk, the state basically negotiate to buy insulin from the big three, and it went down to, I think, $5 or $6. So when you have the negotiation power, then it makes things way easier, to reduce the price. And they are probably still making profit.
Yeah.
Yeah. And another issue which I think the American in the room, familiar with this kind of picture, which is the healthcare system in the US, which is something and really complicated to understand. So they have a level of complexity which allow them to, anytime there's a bit of pushback, they can say, oh, it's not us, it's the pharmacy benefit manager, which nobody knows what they do, who they are, but they are somewhere in the picture and they negotiate things, So it becomes really complex,
And by consumer, you mean patient, this means patient.
Yeah. I didn't do the.
I corrected myself,
And then, just to open the discussion to not only the US, because I was working in the US, but it's a global pandemic. And for a lot of places, the issue is you just don't have it. There's shortage. So it's an excerpt I got from the WHO. And they say that only for 24 countries, only 61% of health facilities have insulins, and only 13% have analog insulins. So it's a really huge issue. So the system is not even providing to everybody. So who is responsible? An ethical question. So I will use an analogy for why I think there is a specific player responsible on this issue. And the analogy I would use is, if you have a well in a land and you own the land, so by extent you own the well, and the well is used for the water for the whole village. What is the responsibility of the landowner about the village? Does he have a right to close the well and say, no, it's my well, I don't want people to have access to it. And if you start pricing the water, and you increase the price and people can't afford it, are you responsible if people, died because they ration water? And I think that with the well, it's really easy to understand that there is a moral issue of, you have way to produce something which is life-saving for people, and then you refuse it to them, basically. Or you organize a system where they don't have access to it. And I use this example and way to kind of, make the system easier to understand, because there is a lot of way then you will see when people talk about the insulin crisis, that a lot of arguments try to defend the one who owned the well, So you have, for the diabetes, you have a lot of blaming the victim, or say, oh, they should have a different lifestyle, why they are like that, which is completely insane, because type 1, they don't.
They should invest in making their own well.
Yeah, which is your idea. Yeah, it is my idea. But they could help me to do that, They choose not to. So you can blame the middleman, the pharmacy benefit manager, and all that stuff. You can blame the government to say, oh, they should invest more. They are the ones who should make the wells,
Negotiate.
Exactly, and then you can blame the cost of energy. It was really expensive to build the well. Now, I have to get my money back. So the cost of energy, I would focus on this one specific because I think this one is the weirdest one to me, is energy nowadays for the big pharma, they are not even really investing too much in it because it is true that it's expensive. So basically they let startup doing the legwork, and when they see it's working, they just buy the startup. So it saves them a lot of money in research and development. So I find a paper that was saying 70% of new products started with a startup. And then I can talk a little bit about stock buyback, which is things that the companies does when they want to artificially increase the value of the share. So the company have a lot of excess of money they got from profit, so they can buy their share, destroy the share, and then it artificially increase the value. And when Trump did the big tax cut that a lot of people were happy with, then it's what the big pharma did. They just buy massive billions of stocks, destroy the stocks, and increase the value. So then when they look back and say, wait, we don't have enough money to invest in drugs, we need more money from the government. This is what they use their money for. And then there's also a case where they just say, no, we'll close the well. So there is a case that I often talk about, which was Merck had an agreement with the Gavi, the Vaccine Alliance, to produce a vaccine in West Africa. And one day they just say, oh no, we will not work on that anymore. We will not provide the vaccine anymore. And it was known that by doing that, there would be thousands of children who would not have access to the vaccine, and a lot of them would die in the process. So then in the meantime, they were saying, oh, there is now this Indian company who can come and start producing it. But the timelines of establishing a new production line, we knew that a lot of children die in the process. And at the same moment, they closed the manufacturing plant in Africa, they opened one in China. And to do the exact same vaccine. And then
same company?
Same company. And then they were asked about it, and they say, oh, there is the secret of business, we can't really share the data, we can't explain it, and stuff like that. So they were selling the vaccine at $3.5 a dose in Africa, and then they start selling it at $40 in China. And then there is something which is a bit more obscure, which is, and it's obscure because we don't have a lot of transparency about it, is that company can, big pharma can, not all pharma actually, can just withdraw a drug if they want to, if they estimate that it's not profitable enough, or if it's dangerous. So you have a big list of drugs which are not produced anymore, and you don't really, they usually say when it's safety reason, but when it's not safety reason, they don't say why. So there is a lot of drug then, I found a paper when they say half of the drug they found was for safety reason, which is good, but then the other other half, we don't know what happened there. And then there is a paper.
They don't have a good reason to share that there was a safety reason, right? Because that would put them in the line of fire.
Yes.
Right, so they just quietly just turn things out.
Which is exactly what the other paper talk about, which is one of the drug tocilizumab, sorry, which actually was removed without disclosing, but going more into the data, the author of the paper was saying that there was probably some kind of safety reason and they just didn't want to disclose it. But then this lack of transparency is a big issue because if there is a drug which is not for safety reason and people rely on this drug, then they don't have access to it anymore, And then it's also complicated because in some places it's still available, in some places it's not. It's pretty bad. So we have a system where artificially, people can pull out of something that they should be responsible of. Because if you're the one who owned the well, you should be sure that people have access to it because their life depends on it. So how do we solve it? which is the most optimist part of my presentation. So one part of it, which is really important, really big in the US, is a patient advocacy group, which often starts grassroots, and sometimes because survival, when your patient advocacy group is complicated, then you have money from the big pharma because they have interest to be sure to control what's happening. And then you can see the language that shift from, oh, the big pharma, the big bad wolf, that, okay, maybe PBM are also not really nice. And then you can see how it watered down the
What was PBM again?
pharmacy benefit management. I mean, you still have, I think, really good one, and there's one which called TY International, which is more a collective of patient advocacy group, and there's a French chapter. I put it because I really like the name, which is Diabetes, which is really great. I love this plan. I think it's a great plan. And then, if we go more into the production of the insulin, the people who want to try to produce insulin and create an alternative to the pharma industry. When I was in the Bay Area, I discussed with Jim Wilkes, we founded Advocacy, and we had a divergence of opinion about how we can achieve production of insulin. And his idea was to really connect with NGO, because his argument, which is a good argument, is there's already a lot of structure built by NGO. So he was saying, I just need $700,000, and then I can connect with the network, and then I can produce insulin. So it started talking with the Gates Foundation, he started talking to WHO, he started talking to all the big players, and it was telling me that it was really complicated to even have a good line of communication and even have a hope to have funding. So for me, it was kind of showing that it's not that easy, even if you can. He was telling me a story that he tried to got a grant where you had to demonstrate how the value you can add for the people, and it got refused because they didn't see the value. And I was, okay, there is something weird here. So, I think he's still trying to do that, and I hope he will succeed, but I think it's really complicated.
Okay, just a question. What about the patent of the insulin patient?
It's the patent. I'm talking about it a bit later, but yeah, it's complicated because the molecules are all off patent, but then the process it's depend of which process or how you want to do it, and the formula also is also heavily patented. So to have the full process clear of patent is not that trivial, but then technically the molecule itself there is no patent on it.
And when you mentioned the formula, what other excipients are in the product?
Yes, because you can patent the pH, you can patent which it's.
But the original patent already had this and they are expired, so you can base yourself on the original formula?
Yes, but for the formula, yes. For the process, some of the process which are off patent are really complicated to do, like the refolding, where you take chain A, chain B, you refold. And it's not really compatible with a small scale production the way we want to do it. So it would imply a heavily equipped, highly centralized system, I think, to do that. So then you have the more funky one, which is the do-it-yourself problem. So this is Michael Lofer, and he was the official head of the Full-Sieve Vinegar Collective, which all the other members are not anonymous. And basically what he was trying to do is develop protocol, finding more in the chemical side, but finding the organic chemistry protocol to do the drugs and just putting it on the internet. And the concept was, if you rely on a drug to survive, then at least you should have a shot, to try to save yourself. That's kind of the logic of it. And he also designed a $30 EpiPen. That because there was a big price gouging in the US when it jumped up to 600, so it became a big story. So I don't ethically I kind of understand his point of view. I don't think it's really sustainable if you really want to build something that really would stand in the long run and people have really access to the drug. You can't rely on what people should be able to do it themselves. You know? So often when we talk to journalists, they kind of see us Open Insulin as this kind of project, where actually we like to think we want to build something more reliable. So then the Open Insulin Foundation, so this is the Omnicommon, which is the building in California where you have the community science lab where Open Insulin is based. And this is a picture of the lab. It's the nice banner, Citizen for Science, Science for Citizen.
So that's the science place where you work too?
I'm not sure you can see the open trans on it, but.
It's like the bad ride.
Exactly.
This one was probably taken when I was stuck in the basement.
Yeah. And the Open Foundation started in Oakland, and then we create contact with other labs. So now we have connection with a lot of more labs. So I will talk about this later. So the way we want to see it would be first to have a good way to do open source protocol to make insulin, and then rely on local pharmacy, hospital to produce insulin, or making our own insulin cooperative, and then be sure to have patient in the loop to be sure they will not be price gouging and stuff to avoid greed, basically. And the way we see it is we want to imagine a flexible system where, because of the but the local regulation, sometimes you can't do a cooperative, it doesn't really exist. So sometimes you have to think, okay, what would be the trade-off? And if it's need to be, then it would be a more traditional thing. So it would be relatively flexible according to where people are. So the way we work at CCL is we basically, everybody can come and everybody can start working on projects. So then we became bigger and bigger. We started small and then we have a lot of people now working. So we kind of start organizing in groups. So we have the science group, the hardware group, where we try to build hardware stuff for the project. People would look more on the FDA, the patent. So there is a lot of different groups now, and it became so big that there is people in the project that I not really met or that I don't really know. So it's a bit weird when you started really with few people. They just, oh yeah, I'm Open Insulin. Oh, how are you? You know, it's really strange. But it's good. Yeah, it's good. It's good. And it's interesting also because then the dynamic it's changed a lot when you have a more structured system. So I will talk briefly about the science and where we are. Basically, we start working first with the glargine, and we try to repeat the paper of making glargine on PCAP studies. And basically what they do is they express the poinsulin, but they also express the casein, which is a protease which is naturally in the yeast. And then only the pure insulin is secreted, which is really not protocol. Unfortunately, it's patented by Biocom. So we don't want to be too close to it, so we kind of tweaking it a bit to be sure we're not be under the patent. And the other project we do is we work on the LISPO, which is a fast-acting insulin, and we try to express it in the periplasm of E. coli, and then extract it from there and purify. So
what's the pros and cons for E. coli versus yeast?
Actually, it depends on which insulin you produce. So if you produce glargine, if you try to produce glargine in E. coli, it will precipitate insulin. So then you can still purify it, but then you have to do refolding and we want to do it again.
Yeah.
And there's no good refolding protocol that you can do easily.
No. I mean, I was traumatized when I was students working on this. So maybe I don't know the good process nowadays. But to me, the main problem of refolding is you have a scaling issue because of usually you do, I don't know which technique people use, but there is this drop technique. And then you increase the volume kind of exponentially. So you have 1 ml, you dilute it in 1 liter. So when you start having big volume, you need cubes. So it really limits you. But maybe there is modern protocol that could be useful. That I'm not aware of.
Are all those analogs as efficient? Like people can use any of them?
Yes. So the thing is, they kind of have different kinetics. So they will dissolve in the blood through time in different ways. So you have the Lispro, which is really fast and really rapidly metabolized. But the glycine will make microcrystal in your blood, and then it's slowly dissolved. So then it's a long. So basically, what happens is, if you use an insulin pump, you will usually use Lispro, if I'm not mistaken, because it's more faster, more easy to control. But then also a lot of people use a mix of two, so they will have, which is also patented. You have a specific mix of Lispro and glycine, and then it helps you to have better control of your glycemia.
Or not a mix, you use both of them
For different times depending on. So you can manage yourself.
Yes,
What is it that you get?
Yes, that's why we kind of really want to have both, because it's really better for the patient to have a good control.
Does that require a lot of learning on your part as a patient?
So in my case, I learned how to do it as a kid, and they have very good strategies to explain it and to help you calculate how much you need, and it's, at least for me, it's not that hard to control. But there's people that need a pump, and because then you don't have to worry with that.
Yeah, so really fast. We have expression of Ecotin Lispro, but the periplasm strategy is really low yield. So now we are trying to change a bit the construct and trying to have more secreted in the periplasm. And this is where I was working more in protein from the whole E. coli. So we can see that when I can digest the Ecotin Lispro with the strawberry, but then it's not clear how much insulin I have because I don't see it on gel. And for the glargine, we had for a long time we had no expression with the glargine's construct, and recently we add the fusion protein and turquoise. And I don't know if you can see, but we have some tubes with blue and fluorescence. And the issue of the strategy is M turquoise is quite big compared to glargine, so you lose a lot of yield. So now we are trying to, we have new construct and we are working on trying to have a smaller construct.
So here the M turquoise was there just for your sake of visualization?
Yes.
Or,
Yes.
okay, it's not at all necessary or
No.
it should not be there?
No, it's a byproduct basically. So we are still using it right now because we bought a new bioreactor. So they are training themselves on the bioreactor, try to learn it. So having something which has fluorescence is pretty nice. But in the future, we want to have a construct without the M turquoise. Okay, now we talk a bit about the issue of the project. I mean, obviously it's low budget because it started like a Kickstarter. So we got 10,000 as a small amount of money, and then we have donation, but we only survive with donation. And we got a lot of free equipment from another association in the Bay Area, which get equipment from companies or institutions who get rid of their own equipment. So we get a lot of old stuff, but then the issue is how you make them work. And this is why I put this picture, because you can see me with a bioreactor, which looked nice, but actually was a complete total mess. And I have no idea what I'm doing here. So I think I was posing for the picture, but basically, I never managed to make these things work. It was really complicated. And then you realize that having something which is working, it's really it's really time consuming, and there is also one of the main issues is the software, because you can have a lot of equipment circulating, but then having the software which corresponds the device. It's really complicated. And often they work in Windows XP and it's a mess. So this was a big hassle. I put access to quality control, which what I mean by that is when you want to have mass spec, when you want to have even HPLC, for us was really complicated because those are really costly in the US. And it's not something that we can find mass spec. There is a guy trying to build a mass spec, but I will not complete to have success. And I put this picture of the heat because to illustrate the logic is at the beginning of the project, we use methanol, which was from what you put in your gas tank. Because apparently heat is pure methanol. So we're okay, yeah, easy, we can just.
What is that?
Heat. It's the name of the brand.
Okay.
Yeah, it's just something you put in your gas tank to remove water, basically. And it's pure methanol, and I was starting feeding the yeast with that, and then I had a lot of contamination. And I realized that actually stuff can grow in methanol, can survive in methanol, which for me was new. Just 100% methanol, something can survive? Yeah, actually, yes. So I stopped using it. But yeah, it's a kind of things which happen in a place where resources are more scarce. And then the patent. Then we talk a bit about patent, which is a big issue. And to illustrate, I just put insulin on lens.org, which is a site when you can see the patent, and you have 500,000 patents on insulin, which is an issue because even if I have volunteers who can look at patents, I can't expect them to have time to look at 500,000 patents. And you can see, which I think is really interesting, the curve of the publication of patents through time. And there is no slowdown. So even when the first one expired, doesn't stop them from making patent. They didn't say, oh, wait, no, we develop a new drug and make money on a new drug. No, they patent the heck out of the insulin and they try to do this strategy of they tweak it a bit, patent to keep the system closed.
So can you take a normal patent and do exactly the same thing?
No, you in theory you have to add value to the patent, but you can modify.
But what if you don't want a patent? Just like you take their process that has expired and you do exactly the same thing. I mean, I understand it's like very expensive and difficult equipment to get to, but can you potentially use their patent that has expired and produce exactly the same thing without adding value if you don't want to patent it?
Yeah, it's basically what we are trying to do. But then when you read paper and say, oh, maybe we should use pH3, and then you realize that somebody patented the use of pH3. So it makes things very complicated because you have your scientific bibliography to do, and then you have to check on the patent, and we are not trained to check on the patent, so everything becomes complicated. But yeah, in theory, if I really do exactly like the paper does, then I should be fine. But the thing is, they also, the expired one are not necessarily the most. So it's. And then there is a whole issue of FDA regulation, but I will not even talk about that because it's all way out of my league. And I let other people try to deal with that.
An expiration of patent is 30 years or 18 years?
Right. I think it depends on the patent type. And then I have another slide which can also illustrate why patent is still an issue nowadays, with the COVID vaccine, where we had Bill Gates first saying, okay, wait, no, we IP is important, we should keep IP. And then the Gates Foundation, decided to change courses and say, wait, maybe for this case, we can do a patent waiver. And the thing is, to me, it's a big loss of time. And we still don't have a patent waiver for the COVID vaccine. And a lot of people still didn't have their first dose of vaccine. We are on the fourth right now. And a lot of people still didn't have one, And patents still play a big role in that. And often people use the argument that, oh yes, but the patent is not the issue because they don't have access to, they don't have manufacturing, and then there is a report which showed that actually there is 100 manufacturer who can do it, but nobody wants to show them how to. And if you want to read more, I'm plugging a guy from the project, sociologist, who did his PhD on the Open Insulin project. So it's an interesting read about all the issue we had in the project, and he called the promise of antibiotic capital. So I don't exactly know what it means, but it's I think it's interesting
But I
to.
think it's worth inviting him to give a seminar.
I would love that actually, yeah.
Let's do it.
Do it.
But can he do it remotely, or should we?
Yeah.
Sure.
I mean, if we say you can come to Paris, he would be happy to.
Where is it now?
He's in Harvard. He's postdoc in Harvard.
Where in?
Harvard.
Howard.
Yeah, I mean, we can think both, but certainly giving, to start with, giving us a Monday seminar on
Yeah.
screen. I think we all know him one way or the other, and there's different projects here that we enjoy
Oh yeah, for sure.
having a discussion with him, so, yeah.
I'll wait for the time.
Talk to Roy, find the date.
Okay.
I will share.
You'd have to wake up early in the morning,
Very early.
but it's better than a jet lag.
Yeah. Then I will talk about also around Open Insulin, what I see is really important for the Open Insulin project, but which is not really directly the Open Insulin project. So one of the big key things I see for the project to succeed, which is, I didn't really explain, but it's making wells everywhere. Be sure that people can build their own wells and then provide insulin to their community. So one of the things I find it's key was the Open MTA, which is a project from the BioBrick Foundation when they basically develop a new MTA where you have less constraints on the distribution of the resources. And then it's not research only, but you can also share it with somebody that can make an activity out of it. So if I imagine to develop something and want to share to people that I want them to make insulin, then this kind of stuff are really crucial, because then the legal framework is there that I can distribute, the tools for them to, and they can produce and distribute. So you have this, scaling effect. And another project that I'm trying to participate more, but I struggle to find time, it started, I think, was the IGEM project first, which is Frienzyme, and basically what they do is they look at sequence that are useful for synthetic biology at large, and then they try to, they synthesize them and they distribute it through the free genes project, which I think most of people know, the free genes and Frienzyme. But these kind of projects are really important to me, and they participate to building an environment which could be useful for Open Insulin. And of course, open bioeconomy, which I think is crucial if you want to create a system where people have the basic chemicals, enzyme, and everything that they can do biology, then it means they probably will be able to do insulin. So I really see those projects as building infrastructure that Open Insulin can build on at the end. And then I will talk about something in the same vein, which is the issue of the strain, which is kind of a specific issue, where it's a bit complicated, but the patent for using the strain for expression are expired, but having access to those strains is still really difficult, because then you have these big biological resources, but sometimes they don't have the strain, or sometimes they have MTA which are really not friendly for you to distribute to other third parties. So finding one which is have a nice MTA and one which have no strain becomes a struggle. And biological resource, there is 7 of them, and now we have more rules, because at the beginning was more researcher having their own personal collection and say, okay, if you need the strain, send me an email and I send it to you. So you have the Yale E. coli Genetic Research Center, which basically it's the email of one researcher and there is no more structure than that. I don't think so. Or it's really small structure. And then you have this ATCC, which is this huge, I think, full automatized system where this way more industrialized. And I think the issue is on all those things, I didn't really find yet a good biological resource when I can have the resource, modify it and share it with people and not having the MTA constraint. So I do believe that at one point we will need to build also something like that where we will be able to share a strain which express things and insulin in particular. And just to talk more about this issue, I started trying to isolate my own yeast because why not? And I took a yeast from lunch with Michael Ferrer. I took the leaf, I put some water, some kanamycin, and I streak it on the plate, which you see the results here. So there is actually 4 different species. I don't know if you can see. And I have no idea what they kind of are, but you know, these 2 big things, this purple species, and then you have those whitey things and one here. And I basically took the one which looked more like yeast and I streak it with YPD and YPD plus chlorophyll. And they grow on YPD plus chlorophyll, so I'm just, okay, then it's good, it's probably not bacteria. And the question I find interesting is who owns the rights of the strain? Is it the farmer, because it comes from his land, you know? Is it Michael, he bought it? Is it me, he gave it to me?
Maybe the yeast is from Franprix.
Yeah, so there is this kind of, to me, this is weird, ownership system, which is for natural things. I mean, it doesn't really make sense.
But if you haven't changed anything in the strain,
Yeah,
is it owned by anyone? I mean, if it is like
it's supposed to be nature, right?
right, it's not supposed to be patentable or anything.
I would assume so, yeah. But it's kind of interesting question. We don't think about that usually, But so maybe I need to do the sequencing of that. I'm not sure I will keep the name because I call him Rera 1 and Rera 2. I didn't ask him, so probably should ask him that. But yeah, I think I will do the sequencing and try to see what it is. And I started doing that with stuff I find in my parents' backyard as well.
So do you have a plasmid that contains your sequences of the insulin or insulin-like that you could then transfer here? Okay.
So I have to modify it first. First, I have to identify if it's Cerevisiae or Bishop astoris. Then I have to make them oxotrophic for histidine because it's the selection tool I use. So I'm starting reading paper on CRISPR and how I can do it with CRISPR. So I can imagine building some kind of kit where all the new species I can transform them and make them oxotrophic for histidine. And then I can modify them and try to express protein on them. So one of the things I can do is actually. I was about to talk about the next target for the Open Insulin project would be GLP-1 because it's the new big thing in the big pharma, the 3 big pharma.
So what is GLP-1 agonist?
So basically, it's a small peptide. It's an hormone, if I'm not saying something silly, and it's triggered the expression of insulin. So it's good for people with type 2 and to help them to have a better glycemic, basically. And we actually when I was in the US, we talked with people connected to the industry, and they will basically say, "Oh, insulin, it's over. Soon we're not doing insulin at all. We do GLP-1." So for a lot of them, GLP-1. When somebody said that to me, I'm just okay. Can I produce GLP-1 then? And there is pattern then still, but then I can see the expansion and I can prepare to be ready for when it's expired. Then I have already the strain. So this is my goal for GLP-1. So I found a paper where they express GLP-1 on fish stories. I designed the plasmid, it's somewhere upstairs, and it will be the next stuff I will work with, I guess.
Is GLP-1 easier to produce than insulin?
I have no idea. I don't know. I hope so.
Is it able to, but it's not able to help people with type 1?
No, no, because
produce insulin.
no, you don't have
You
any.
still need to have the capacity to produce.
Yeah. In theory, I would say it's easier because insulin is particularly annoying with the discrete bridge and the two-chain system, but we see. And then what I'm doing at the Learning Planet Institute is trying to build an automation system where I can screen yeast, but then I can also imagine doing multiple protein targets, and I can even know I'm thinking maybe I should screen from strain because I can maybe make a lot of strain and see the one which expresses the most GFP, and I would take this one as a platform for other expression. And the interest of automation in that case in open trust to me is that we are connected with a lot of other biocare places, and some of them they already have an open trust, and open trust is not that expensive, so we can imagine that if we have enough funding, we can provide them in open trust, so that we can parallelize the work and also having people working on different protein of interest, and then increase the things we can do, and hopefully having a place when we can put all the strain in a common, that not data but cell bank basically, and then having this relationship between the different part of the network. And that's it.
But one thing that is hard to find a solution for, but I think is key, right, is the fact that actually there is a huge amount of people that actually need it, but their voice is unheard. How to make your voice heard, right? I mean, if you would have had, right, all these people that do not manage to make a voice because they don't have their communication channels, give them the right communication channel, right? You will have 100 million euros in your hand to do your project properly.
Yeah, it's a good question, and actually there's people in the project.
Right, we talk about, there are rare diseases which it's a different story, but here, right, if you take the number of people that do not have regular access to insulin in any country, right? Each one of them puts 1 cent, right, in a common pot, right, for the Open Insulin Foundation to do things properly. Right? And they do this every month, right? You get the budget that you need in order to overcome all your barriers within 2 years' time.
Yeah, but it's complicated to do things that way because there's a lot of always cost in this kind of thing. So you have the cost of logistics, the cost of all those things is tricky. And then communication, how you reach people and say, okay, we organize and we have this pool and you put 1 cent. I don't know, I don't have a good answer about that because to me it's, I find biology way easier than those questions, to be honest.
Of course, but your biology is sort of, even the biology that you do manage to do, right, is hindered, like you showed us, with so many aspects of working not on the ideal strain, not working with the ideal construct, not working with the ideal purification, not working in the ideal conditions, right? And not having, one lawyer that can give you a full roadmap of what is possible. So you're walking in the dark. You're spending much more time in a, say, unfruitful way.
Yeah.
Right? Because of these roadblocks.
Yeah, and resource is a big part of it. Like if we have way more resource, then we can pay a lawyer. I will not go into the details, but legal things. It's really complicated to find a good lawyer and find somebody, because in the US they have this pro bono system where lawyers have to give their time to projects who can't afford a lawyer.
Everywhere in the world they have the same.
I don't know if I don't think in France they have that for, they can have project which is,
Pro bono?
yeah, but pro bono for patent, stuff like that, I'm not sure it exists.
For what, for intellectual property, yeah.
But then we had big firms working with us, but then not really working with us, because for them it was a good way to say, oh, we did the pro bono, but they didn't really do anything. So it's tricky. Yeah.
Isn't this the place where the government should step in? Like that's what, like, for example, in Europe or places where it's working, it's because you're not, they are the ones who put the cap, and like in US also, I think there are already California and some other states which have state legislation, even though there is not federal legislation.
Yeah.
And then like you're not allowed to market directly to consumers, because that's where I think like a lot of this supply and demand gets skewed. So like writing to representatives and things like that, like, because I think if the onus is put on the individuals, then they are playing the corporate game.
Yeah.
Because it becomes harder and harder for the individuals who need it the most to.
So we are in a relation we talk with, a lot of people talk with us. So we talk with people in the California state system, because they're like, oh, it's interesting what you're doing. And then we are talking with the Parliament of Maine, where they are trying as well to think about how they can have something which is state-based. In California, really pushing for, okay, this is not working, we need to establish state-wise production of essential medicine and extract themselves from the whole system. But I think they start talking about that 1 or 2 years after I arrived in the US. So it takes a long time, to go through the legislative battle, to all the talk, the lobby, because the big pharma is the biggest lobby in the US. They give money to every politician. So more or less. I'm a bit excessive here, but to a lot of politicians and Democrats and Republicans, they just give money.
I think the comparison to the well holds as well, because it's the same problem in the US actually. Like access to groundwater is like whoever drills the deepest and can extract the fastest has the right to take it. So like lots of communities run out of water on their tap because so like I think like there is not a strong push generally for like more regulation of these like
Common resources.
Yeah, no, the crazy part to me is just the one who will do that, we say, oh, why the government is doing nothing? But they are the one who dig to have the water, and this is, to me, it's kind of insane, but yeah.
But true, open source, because like a lot of farmers, companies' argument is that everything which we put in goes to our R&D applications, and that's like such a black box which needs so much of money. So maybe what project could do is try to break down the black box and just make people also understand that, it doesn't cost as much as they claim it costs.
And we try to work a bit on price transparency, understand what's behind the price, but it's really difficult to get the data, because they don't disclose it. So sometimes you will have people or economists working on trying to understand what is the part of the cost of production, what is the part of the marketing, because in the US it's a big thing and all that stuff. But it's not public, so you just have to guess. So if you type cost of production of insulin on Google, you will have big variation of estimation, but they are just estimation. And I think this is also a big issue, is that then they can still pretend that it's really expensive, and at the end the margin they are making really, really high.
To your mind, I think I can imagine two valid approaches, but do you think a good end goal for Open Insulin is to create these sort of insulin cooperatives where it's a completely new biomanufacturing paradigm, or to sort of put pressure on existing manufacturing to say like, hey, we're going to get that political power and demonstrate to you, like, you know, scare them?
Yeah, it's interesting because to me it's always the kind of debate. It's classical. You know, you change from the inside, you build something outside, and I can understand the appeal to try to change from the inside, but I'm pretty pessimistic on this kind of approach because the interest is not on that for sure, and you will just waste a lot of time and energy trying to talk with a lot of people saying, you know, people are dying, you should do something, and in the end, it doesn't change.
I don't think it's exactly changed from the inside.
Yeah.
What I was just saying, it's more like putting political pressure.
Yes, but then to me this is the advocacy group what they are doing, you know. So the way Open Insulin project structure is just we want to make insulin, and a lot of people see the project. He talks about that. You should read the social stuff because he talks about that. A lot of part of the project, people coming to the project was this is not really about producing and distributing drugs. It's about a statement, and they thought that people starting the project just wanted to make insulin to demonstrate it's easy and then putting political pressure. But that's not our goal. Our goal is really to produce and create the tools that people can produce and distribute. So I think of course you want to use it, but I don't see why you would not try to go, you know, further, you know, and try to. And at the end, if it's enough for the farmer to increase the price, it's fine with me, you know, I'm agree with that. But it will solve a big problem in the US, but it will not solve the problem in other parts of the world. And then the political pressure, if you ask a French guy about the insulin, he will not even understand that there is a crisis. Because for him, it's just, you pay nothing, which problem, you know? So then it's become, applying political pressure to Western governments is probably really difficult because it's out of the realm of people. You know? Yeah.
Can you show the slide with the different projects that are running, which you saw you?
Oh, this one?
No, with the different projects of the Open Insulin.
Ah, yeah. This one?
No,
The group one.
This,
yeah. I find this extremely interesting, like how there is different groups that are becoming in charge of different aspects of making this work, and you put a lot of emphasis in the regulatory aspects. Before talking about how to invite people, I see there is a communication group.
Yeah.
So which of these groups have the highest amount of effort going on? Which do you think is the biggest bottleneck? Is that the main bottleneck in which efforts should be added?
So the biggest group is the science group, at least the most active one, where we have, because you build about something really practical. Like people will go in the lab, they will do experiment, then.
And that's how it started also, right?
Yeah, exactly. So when you have meeting, you talk about something really practical, and you don't really have to think about the other aspect of the line, you know. I think it's really interesting, and it didn't really start that way. So then there's a lot of history about how it's structured that way that I think you would find interesting. But if I try to pick one which we really need, I think by necessity it would be the regularity group, because it's at the end you can do everything you want, have the best project. If they want to say no, it's not good enough, it's not good enough, you know. So at least from the US, the regularity group is the main one. But if you think, you know, more globally, in a lot of part of the world, there is part of the world where there is exemption from the WHO for patent issue, for example, where the rules are way loose, and then you can imagine having way less red tape for making a project.
But this is more legal policy, right, than regulatory?
Oh, yeah, sorry, yeah, but what's the difference between the two? You see-
Regulatory is like FDA approval, like more or less, based on.
Yeah. So I would say, yeah, no, so the legal policy, I would say, it's probably the one we need more. And the issue is also the people you need is different, you know. Like if somebody can show up and say, oh, I want to do science, then you can teach him and you can spend some time. But for this one, we need expert. And this kind of expert, they don't spend time in this kind of project, you know, they have their consulting firm or whatever. So we have some people connected to the area, but I don't think we have somebody which is really an expert and can say, okay, this is how it works, you know. So this is the big issue. Yeah.
So one thing I wonder about is like the legal and regulatory aspects. Can't you just ignore them for a start?
Yeah, no, it's
In a sense, like, let's say you have like a working protocol that you can put on the web and say, this is how you would be making insulin at home.
yeah.
And now we wave our hands, whether it's safe or not, and whether like we break any patents. If you go and do this, good on you. I mean, that's how the closed loop insulin people, not like the insulin administration, artificial pancreas people did it, right? They said, well, we hacked your hardware, here's the protocol, this is the software you need to write. This is definitely not FDA approved, but like, it's an open source release protocol, it's free speech, you cannot sue us.
Yeah. It's a Michael Loeffler approach, which is, you know, let's just put it somewhere and then people deal with it, which I'm fine with that. For the majority of the legal and regulatory group, I think it's, at the end it comes down to people joining the project, not having the will to do biology and say, okay, no, I have other skills I can use, and then they start organizing that way. But it's not really something we naturally focused on, you know.
Okay.
Then it went on, and then it created all kind of issues with the work. But yeah, no, I think at the end it will be that way anyway, because when we'll have something working, we'll publish it and then build on that. You know.
So what are the steps that you plan on, I mean, you know, when it starts happening on publishing, like, would you be planning on publishing, like, you know, the first step, I don't know, like the plasmid that you were able with the strain?
Yeah.
And then, I mean, would you be planning on publishing, you know, even a protocol that allows you in the lab to produce enough insulin, even if it's not decentralized? That would still be. I mean, you know, like you can imagine that in other places, maybe the individual cannot produce its own, but if they are close enough to a university or a...
It's the way we see it. It's just, we still don't really say you should do it at home, because I don't think it's really, first, it's bad PR, to be honest. And
it's what?
Bad PR.
What does that mean?
Public relation. So it's just, everybody we talk with journalists, they put on this book and we have a hard time to get hold of these books. So usually when we talk to journalists, we try to emphasize that it's not for a do-it-at-home project. Because the problem is when they start characterizing that way, then they can write a whole thing about how it's dangerous, look at those mad scientists and all that stuff. So we try to, basically try to get more legitimacy, you know, it's what it is. But yeah, at the end, we had a lot of talk about how we do the kind of defensive strategy. So you have the pattern and abandon, you have the, I'm more in the, let's put everything on bioarchive, and normally it's enough that nothing can happen to that. And yeah, say to people, if you have, so the way we are structured now is, I should have said that in the presentation. Basically, we become a non-profit. And we imagine the way it will work, that Open Insulin Foundation will be, the structure will be in charge to helping people developing their activities. And then the one which develop their activities can be connected to the network, but there will not be a direct association. So a lot of independent manufacturer, but an Open Insulin would just be, okay, if you need somebody who will help you to establish the production, then we can do that. Ideally, it's how it will work. Then you send somebody for a few months, you have a bit of equipment, and you do your thing. But at the beginning, it would just be, let's put that out there.
Since when this is active?
I think it started in 2015 or 16, something like that. Yeah, it's been a while.
Yeah, independent.
It's a long run. We are here for the long run.
I have a question about people who have done iGEM. Does iGEM say like, okay, this year we're gonna work on, like this year the projects have to be on this topic?
No, the team choose their own projects.
So like, it wouldn't be possible, you know, to talk with iGEM people and say like,
Yeah, so
The competition this year is on-
projects to tackle.
sorry?
Have the foundation propose some projects to tackle that they think are.
Right, like, you know, like a very big title, and then,
It's an interesting idea. Huh? Thanks.
Okay, if there aren't any more questions, thank you so much.
Thank you, Yann. Very good.